Hey there, got another video for you guys today at Okfuskee Farm, and this one is all about managing pigs in the forest and some of the ways that Bobby uses pigs to help clear land, regenerate things, and really set it up for more diverse uses in the future. Really going into really raw, really thick wooded areas and getting them ready to do some more pasture management and moving sheep through in the future and all those sorts of things. So hope you enjoy. All right, Bobby, thanks for having me out again today. And we're going to talk all about pigs and sort of management in the woods and what you're using them for.
Yeah, we've raised pigs pretty much the whole time we've been farming. And we first started doing it as a way to get rid of sod areas that we want to transition into more perennial, diversified perennial systems. And then that moved into using them. These are bigger breeds at the time, to dig ponds and do shallow earthworks, as well as increase the fertility on our lands that had been cropped and had a low level of mineral nutrient fertility. So with the pig rotations, you can kind of, and all the feed you're putting into them for that enterprise, you're then building up fertility for a next level of perennials at our farm. Now over here, what we're going to talk about is how we're using pigs on other properties that we don't own. We haven't put all the permanent infrastructure in yet, but using them as a tool to create silvopasture out of unmanaged woodland.
All right, so there's a lot to talk about here. What are some of the things that you want to show the audience today?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do a quick pig move to this spot, and then we'll just show different before-after kind of situations where the pigs have been, and the before will be like right before, and then something that was done a few months ago to kind of see, followed by some of the post-pig management practices that we're doing as we thin and take some of those say trimmings into other useful products.
Sounds great.
We're about to move our pigs from about a 3-day paddock to a new paddock here in the woods on a property we've been managing with these swine for I don't know, they've been over here for probably a year. In this case, we're jumping across an access road, so we're not just opening up a gate into a connected paddock. So we're going to lure them with a little bit of food. They know the drill. Just down this path and into this new paddock here.
Come on, piggy. Come on, piggy. Come on. Good piggy.
All right, Bobby, so in terms of the setup here, I mean, we got portable fencing, and this is your water here. This is all you basically need for them?
Yeah, we're in a pretty remote property. This is something that we've just taken over management of the past half a year or so. So we've yet to put in permanent infrastructure like perimeter fencing and any water lines. So everything's been kind of portable and hauling water. As you can see, we've got a tote on a trailer. We'll fill up from our farm and bring it down this sort of center access road and use it to fill these waters. It just has a gravity nipple, a stainless steel nipple that the pigs can pull water from. It's very efficient when it comes to water usage.
All right, so in terms of feed, what are they eating right now?
See, right now they're eating a mix of a lot of cold fruit from our farm, stuff that was bad, or ground fallen fruit we'll just pick up and feed them, or stuff we cull out of when we're sorting. They've got their base feed is a non-GMO grain swine feed that we get through Country Farm and Home, and a coal trail mix that comes out of some plant that I don't know what, it doesn't meet their spec, and so it's a relatively cheap way to add a little fat towards the end of their life cycle.
And what percentage? I mean, they're obviously foraging while they're out here too. Is that like a good percentage of their diet?
Oh yeah, we've sort of taken a root hog or die approach with this second phase of hog production that we've been doing. I don't know, the past 5 years. We started with large breed, sort of Tamworth, Old Spot, Berkshire breeding program, filling up a feed bin, getting them to market as fast as possible. So the phase 2, we got back into the smaller breed, which is American guinea hog, way more efficient on putting weight from forage, and crossing that in with the Ossiball. So both of those are sort of unique, both heritage breed. We could, both are interesting to look into. They have real high quality fat, a different kind of darker pork, and really good in this system. We were looking for a small breed that did well on pasture with not as many feed inputs. So throughout most of their lifespan, you're looking at the last 8, or at least the slowest growing of a group of between like 30 or 40 when we stopped our breeding program. This is sort of the last group that's going to the processor in a couple weeks, and we're kind of finishing them out now. But like I said, it's been limiting their feed that really forces them to forage for as much of their food as possible, pushing into some of the less desirable things that we kind of want to eradicate as we're taking clearing out these unmanaged woodlands into silvopasture.
So do you regulate the amount of feed that you basically give them, or what you're feeding them based on like what you want them to eat out here? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, for the most of their life, for their adult life, they've been getting, how to translate this into pounds. You probably have 8 mature pigs were getting 5 to 6 pounds of feed a day. So it's like 8 yogurt scoops plus whatever other scraps we're able to amass at that time.
All right, so part of your work out here is regenerating the landscape, building pasture, and so do you often follow the pigs with some seeding?
Pretty much always. We're using this ground disturbance to go ahead and move the plant species population more into something that is desirable for our animals. We don't want to if you just let it sit undisturbed, yeah, stuff's gonna grow, but is it going to be what we necessarily want to be there? The disturbance, what we're seeing here, is kind of an odd case where you're getting heavy disturbance along some areas and them not really going at this weed I hadn't identified that we've seen sort of grow up down here, and the sheep haven't eaten it, because this is really part of this greater sheep pasture. So we're kind of moving them out of here. A lot of that depends. There's typically a 5-day is the max duration for any paddock that we'll keep the pigs in. We keep them moving, and they wouldn't be back for a year or more. In some cases they don't come back, and it's the right amount of disturbance that lets us come in and do any hand management, hand thinning, or mechanical stuff following the pigs. But yeah, I would say with the pigs, we're usually always seeding something depending on the time of the year. Now that we're kind of pushing in towards the cool season planting window, here being late August, we're doing a mix fescue, which is something that does well in these shaded understory silvopasture environments. Not a great ecological species, but there's certain benefits to it. And then a brown top millet is just sort of a help get some short cover biomass.
All right, so you're using the pigs for disturbance, obviously, and then you're following it with what you would like to try to get growing here.
Yeah, and we will often always put out like a native seed mix of things, just as we diversify, just to take advantage of that opportunity and disturbance. And a lot of times it's seed that we just collect off our specimens around our farm. It goes into a bag, and we throw some of that in to our feed bag. And and we've seen all kinds of things spread throughout the properties. So this is the first time the pigs have been on this spot. We decided to go ahead and move them prematurely just because of the soil wetness and the rain we've had into a new paddock. And like I said, they're only got a few weeks left of their life. We're trying to march them back down, cover as much ground as we can. Yeah, I mean, it's been a wet year, so one of the benefits of that, is the amount of fungi that's growing up in the woods, and also benefit of with the frequent moves with the pigs and being out in the woods is you can come across some good finds. These are chanterelle mushrooms. They're pretty easy to identify by their color, their false gill, and their smell. It's kind of similar to apricots, but there's usually a perk. You're always foraging and finding something else out there where you're tending livestock, and take the time to sit and think. Being in the woods is a peaceful place to be. So yeah, pigs is a vast topic in terms of using them as a tool on the land. So just to add, specific context of what we're doing over here. So we've got unmanaged woodland. There's a lot of mature hardwoods. There's some, you know, some pines that are kind of at the end of their life cycle, need to be harvested. And you sort of have a extent of some monocultures of species as part of the herbaceous ground layer. And what we're trying to do is to get in and get more carbon flowing through this system by moving it towards a more of a savanna system. So we've got more grass species in the understory that are more efficient at storing carbon than trees. They need a lot less rest every time you graze it and get the root dieback. So we're using the pigs as kind of a way to knock out what's here. So we'll take the pigs, usually 1 or 2 strand polywire, not the netting, that's a different story, but most pigs pretty much be managed with 1 or 2 strands of polywire, which is a huge advantage there. Makes it easy to get into scrubby woods. Let the pigs take that first cut. Again, you're trying to stock them dense, get the right stocking density so they can give you the amount of disturbance you want within a certain amount of time. Because soil compaction and disturbance is a function of the duration of time, more so than the number of animals in that one area. So we don't want to completely turn up all the soil. We just kind of want it to eat all the good stuff, or the stuff we're trying to get rid of, take a bunch of energy away from that, rough up the soil enough where we can then seed in. And at the same time, they've kind of soaked up all the ticks. The pigs go for poison ivy right away. They love to eat poison ivy. And so it makes it so much cleaner than come in with a chainsaw, and we'll thin out and cut the less desirable things, either bucking them up and stacking them for firewood, or making chip piles that will come in later when the soil conditions are right to chip, leave on site, or to haul back to our farm for fertility.
All right, so this area behind you, this is you have not moved any animals through here yet.
This is land that hasn't been touched by the pigs yet, and then we'll go see sort of what it looks like.
Okay, and sort of to compare what happens in nature, right? Like the animals don't stay in one spot for too long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pigs can be a liability or an asset from an ecological standpoint. So you got to keep your animals moving. Rest and rotation is crucial to everything. And with the pigs, soil moisture is important. So it's nice if you can raise a pig just through the growing season when it's typically drier. Stop pigs over the winter. But obviously, if you're breeding them, it's a different story. But so soil moisture does affect the amount of damage that's happening and how fast you ought to move them. Like up there, we just decided we need to go ahead and move them.
Okay, so eventually, what is this land going to be used for after you guys have done some work in here?
I mean, long term, this will be thinned out slowly into a silvopasture, trying to get more light into that understory, get younger species. We can let in another age of canopy hardwoods, oaks and hickories, selecting those, maybe taking out the ones that fall or age out. But yeah, I mean, it is a long-term, our goal here, this is land that we don't own, we're managing for others, and they're fine us moving towards this vision. So yeah, silvopasture for sheep primarily. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So for future animal grazing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you want to look at some areas that you've already moved through?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, just here's an area that was the pigs were on 3 weeks or so earlier. We seeded out, and you can see a pretty high density of grass starting to establish, minus the previous ground cover that was here.
Yeah, you can obviously see a lot of the plants that were growing that they've been eaten, and then the ground looks a little bit disturbed, obviously after being a few weeks. But then again,
it's been wet.
It's been wet, but also it's been planted too. The ground is covered pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we'll often seed, depending on the size of the seed we're putting out, we'll seed in the last day the pigs are there to get some additional, contact with the soil or soil cover. But often it's we'll seed out our cheap annuals, after the pigs, because usually we're going in and then doing any cutting with the saw, and we're kind of trampling that seed on. So it'll be several periods of seeding to kind of get it to a final mix, and at that point it's just using the sheep with their high impact rest system. And if we want to seed in there, but every time you're putting out seed, you're spending money. So if you can kind of establish some high priority areas with the good species, and then coupling that with the right grazing program, you can take those desirable species and they will propagate out into the farm via wildlife.
Okay, so you were saying that generally the pigs are coming through here once a year, or they may not come again, right?
Well, yeah, they may not come again. So we're trying to, it is taking a step backward, to take 2 steps forward from a land regeneration process.
Right,
so,
but you're not thinking in terms of months or weeks. We're talking seasons and years.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, here's an area that the pigs were on, created their disturbance. We've had sheep ran through here a couple times, and we've been in with saws and chippers to do more thinning. You couldn't see through this when we first came on here. I mean, it was super dense, a lot of brambles, a lot of other tree species that we've sort of pulled out. We're leaving some, predominant oaks, hickories. There's some pines that need to go to get a little bit more light in here. And then you can see when the sheep come through, particularly during the summer, we'll cut down a lot of our elms, which have a pretty high protein in their leaf. Some go to the ground, some get bucked up, the top's chipped, and depending on the size, you can see we cut some up higher that's sort of coppicing or pollarding back that will give us control during subsequent years to kind of come in and manage those stems, dropping those for fodder.
Okay, so you've come through here mechanically and taken out a lot of these like trees and stuff, and this really, what are the benefits of that? I obviously see more light coming through. Yeah,
we can start to get grass species and stuff established in here, and it hasn't had its permanent seeding yet. It's still just been annual. So when the sheep come back in this fall, we will take down probably some of the rest of the fodder species and do a heavy seeding of perennial grasses. So yeah, I mean, the goal here is to get light, favoring the mass-producing trees, but get light for our understory species and kind of see what things are going to come up. And you can kind of see through here, all these areas have kind of been managed that was way denser before, and now we're getting more light, more carbon moving through that system. Because every time you come in and you coppice a tree too, you're also getting a lot of root dieback and regrowth. The way to sequester a lot of carbon in a forest is you need to have mixed shade stands. You actually need to harvest it. Short duration woody crops really do well for sequestering carbon in the system. And that's kind of what we're doing with a lot of the species that we plant, even with the livestock, or we favor with our pruning systems, the pollarding, is to get a lot of short duration woody crops or dual purpose fodder species. They got a lot of benefits in the system, from mining nutrients that have leached down into the deeper soil profile, to providing shade, to even helping open up poor draining soils. Because every time you're cutting those plants back, like willows, that's a lot of like major root dieback and big macropores you're opening up into the soil to help increase infiltration and drainage.
Okay, so obviously coming in here with like chainsaws and chippers and stuff,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And so what sort of determines like if the areas you want to do that versus sort of letting it be a little more natural?
Yeah, we're certainly not doing this everywhere, but there's a lot of unmanaged woodland, and it comes back to what resources, what conditions can we get in at the time, from labor, soil conditions, hitting your high priority access first. I mean, we've pretty much ran pigs through this entire forested system at this point, and we're slowly working our way in with the chipper as labor allows. Just to keep in mind how this land was managed for thousands of years. It wasn't just unmanaged forest. I mean, it was more of a savanna system, even on the East Coast, from native people using fire to create openings for grasslands, that you had large herds of bison that were roaming this part of the country, so it wasn't untapped, unmanaged wilderness like we sometimes think. Yeah, and instead of using fire, we're using other tools, the tools of grazing and animal impact, via the technology of portable electric fencing, to replace that disturbance regime that used to be fire, both managed and unmanaged by people. Yeah, pollarding is just a type of coppicing, typically off a central trunk above a browse line, where you can manage all the regrowth. This is an old world practice. You know, there's a lot of uses for that top growth, from, you know, fodder hay to doing basketry to fuel wood to even, you know, fruit and nuts. So this is sort of what we're doing. It's a pretty simple thing to do, and most hardwood species here are prone towards being able to coppice, to regrow when they're cut back, because when all this land was clear cut, well, the things that survived were things that could coppice for the most part.
So coppice is regrowth after a cutting?
Yeah, I think it's more of a technique, but things that ability to resprout and regrow from the main trunk after being cut back. So I think coppice would be more of a general term, or pollarding is a specific type of coppicing. So for sheep, this is fine. I mean, you know, they're going to come in, they're going to eat the low stuff. We're trying to move, you know, everything down to a more browse height, but really the main point of regrowth is going to be concentrated here at some point, and that'll give us management where we can cut that back every with some sort of rotation. Every 3 years we'll cut one hard, lay it down for the sheep while they're in here.
Okay, so the benefit really here is you get the benefits from that new regrowth, but you bring it to a height where the animals can eat it.
Yeah, and again, trying to get, you know, take advantage of this sort of like mid-story sort of range where we're favoring canopy species and herbaceous underlayer, where we can still get some additional fodder for our summer grazing, but have control over it. If we were just cutting it to the ground and we continued grazing at the same frequency for our grass species, we would deplete the energy out of this tree and kill it and weaken it. So if we can get stuff higher, where then we can allow a little bit more rest, we can keep this thing thriving for many, many years.
Okay, and you're also getting a lot more control of shade as well.
Yep, you get controlled shade to that too. Yeah, so this is an area, you know, like I said, we've ran pigs through this whole chunk of woods. Part of the reason is sort of getting up and marking the property line so we can put in perimeter fencing this year, this winter, and starting to really, you know, take a first cut at opening up this woodland. Like I said, this was all mostly that sort of wild grape kind of ground cover, which the sheep will eat a little bit of, but it was a monoculture. So the pigs have been through here, and we'll come in and, you know, cut up some stuff and put it in chip piles. A lot of times the junkier cedar, the tops that don't chip well, we'll put those in piles, burn it like right here, and, you know, that stuff will get raked out. We'll take the cedar poles that within a certain size for doing top post on our corner bracing, so we'll set those aside or for other building projects. And then we also use cedar as a lot of our like kindling and initial fuel wood for our stoves in the wintertime. It burns real hot and clean, so you can see, you know, piles like that get stacked up in crotches of trees off the ground. So when we come back through with a small trailer, we'll just load it up and take it to the barn. You know, we don't really waste. This is too shady to invest in like summer annuals in this system, so we'll put down. We won't do much, so there's still some disturbance. This was a lot drier when the pigs were here, so there wasn't like as much soil disturbance happening. There's still a lot of organic matter on the topsoil to protect the soil, and you had good, you know, tree canopy to intercept the rainfall. But you can still see the young cool season grasses starting to flush. But we will bring the sheep through here in a few months, or at least when that fencing is up, and then we'll just trample seed in our more permanent cool season seed. Because you will get, once all these leaves are down, you're going to have some really nice spring, you know, late spring grazing during a kind of a, not that we need to forage at that time, but, you know, you'll be surprised how green this opens up with the initial thinning we've been doing. Cool.
Well, a lot to show here, Bobby, and this is such a complicated topic, obviously.
Still learning it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is like you learn and you experiment, and there's a lot to learn and share here, and appreciate sharing this with everybody, and, you know, just using pigs basically in the forest here to use it for future purposes. So
yeah, trying to, you know, again, they're not a long-term thing. It's a very short-term, one-time tool, and move on to something better.
Very cool. Well, at the same time, we're growing pigs for food, but we're also
Tasty pig.
Yeah, tasty pig. But also generating the landscape here. So
Yes, sir.
thanks for sharing.
Thank you.